If you think Mormons are the only ones who criticize secret lives of Mormon wives, think again. Active and believing Mormons see the show as sensationalism, which inaccurately represents the faith, behaviors, and attitudes within the church. The show emphasizes conflict, restriction, and dysfunction within the Mormon faith. Believing Mormon women will internalize the standards of worthiness by living both the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. And these women want to practice more of the spirit of the law and let the letter of the law fall as hard as the belief Mormons used to have that the blacks were second-class saints and would not receive the same heavenly blessings as white people. It is very much the doctrine that to get to the highest level of heaven, you must be married in the Mormon temple and keep the covenants you make inside, which is to wear the garment daily throughout your life, keep the law of chastity, live always to be worthy of that temple recommend, which means paying your tithing, not drinking coffee, tea, or alcohol, and among other things, act as Jesus would. These women are rejecting the doctrine to essentially live their own interpretation of the religion and, quite frankly, create their own cult. Think about it. There's a clear line of who's in and who's out of the circle based on standards of acceptance, loyalties, and consequences of behavior. There is an illusion of authenticity with a deeper pressure to conform. Number two, they all kind of look the same. With the exception of Whitney, they wear their hair the same length and the same way, and the styles of clothing are similar, and they all kind of talk the same way too. And number three, their beauty, charisma, and perfection in bodies, homes, and events inspire an aspiration towards elitism. I watch the show, and even though I do see their strengths and confidence in calling out intentions, dishonesty, and toxic traits, I also see a lot of emotional immaturity and unchristlike behavior. They are a fringe group that is a gross misrepresentation of Mormon women. And I get what they're trying to do. They are equalizing the gender roles and bringing down the patriarchy. They are trying to modernize the church by shining a light on things that need to change if people are going to stay in the church. It isn't because they are fighting the rigidity of the rules, but maybe the pendulum is swinging the extreme opposite direction because they have not been educated on how to exist within the balanced middle. What they don't realize is that their shocking and eyebrow-raising conduct on national TV and social media brings to attention perhaps the reasons why the church sets high standards and guidelines. These are my thoughts as I have only watched episode number 1 of season 2. And as Taylor said, she feels that if she hadn't been with Dakota out of wedlock, she would have avoided the heartache of him cheating on her. However, that is a logical fallacy because even if they had been married, he would have been unfaithful because that's the guy he is. Then she would have been stuck in a marriage having to go through a divorce. A cheating guy is going to cheat on you whether you're married or not. People who use purity culture to secure safety and positive outcomes don't realize it is a false sense of security. I have heard way too many stories of infidelity and abuse happening in the church to know that it is rampant and happens probably as often inside as it does outside. But unless you hear victim stories, do your research, follow the Another Bishop Was Caught with Children news, you will never know about it because the church must be protected for Jesus' good name. The perceptions of Mormons are not changing like these women want because people are very aware of Mormon beliefs since it is a hot topic right now. And there are a lot of brave ex-Mormons sharing their stories and talking openly about the real scoop about being on the inside. And I'm sorry, girls, but every Nevermo that I talk to thinks that mom talk is crazy. And if your goal is to paint Mormonism with an enticing brush, it's not working. It's raising even more eyebrows. And as an ex-Mormon, I do appreciate what they're trying to do, and I believe people should practice religion in their own way. But Mormonism is so high demand that once you step outside that line, just like Whitney, you are no longer seen as worthy to be in that circle. You must live the spirit and the exact letter of the law, or that's not practicing the right Mormonism. If women's empowerment is an excuse to sin, and the only times they really turn to or live the religion is when it benefits them to fit in that culture or to perform their grounding rituals, I do have complicated feelings about that. You see, the idea is that religious practice should have flexibility. When you are in tune with your own spirituality, individual members can carve out space for nuanced belief. But the Mormon religion is fully based on patriarchal leadership, and if you change that, it's no longer Mormonism. The doctrine is prescriptive, not descriptive. Your standing with God is directly tied to correct behavior as much as belief. The church claims divine, top-down revelation. Personal revelation is only valid if it matches church teachings. Anything outside that risks being labeled apostasy or being deceived by the adversary. What you might call cultural expectations like modesty, rules for women, family structure, when they are taught as divine mandates. And even in the church handbook, which is like a church law book or constitution for the church, these expectations are reinforced with scripture and general conference talk. So even if some members live more flexibly, the institution sees that as less faithful, not as a valid version of Mormonism. And remember what I said about the highest level of heaven and the temple? It is literal gatekeeping because you have to answer yes or no to very specific questions. There's no nuance allowed. You can say, I follow the Spirit in my own way, or I pay tithing in my own way. And you can't do that and be granted access. So even quietly living a more flexible Mormonism doesn't make you worthy by religious standards. But the religion itself, its official doctrines, ordinances, and structure leaves very little room for flexibility without spiritual or social consequence. So if you are not living the standards, you are not living Mormonism. It's a different spiritual practice altogether. Which, again, I believe they should be able to do because I believe in spiritual autonomy, but the Mormon handbook and teachings don't really allow for that. And that is why Mormons are not excited about these women representing them or trying to change the church. So if nuanced and ex-Mormons believe you should be free to practice spirituality your own way, why wouldn't they be excited about the way these women live Mormonism? One reason is because we didn't leave Mormonism because we wanted to act the way that they do. It wasn't because we couldn't live the standards. We would have suffered even more living those standards if it was true. We left with an honest and fair look at the truth claims and tapped into our own moral compasses to make our own conclusions. So the narrative that you can still stay in the church and just live it the way you want doesn't work for us. It isn't a good representation to the public of why we left. And secondly, ex-Mormons aren't mad that someone lives Mormonism differently. They're uncomfortable when that freedom is used to gloss over harm, reinforce double standards, ignore cognitive dissonance, or gaslight others about what the religion really demands.